Recording lights. Okay, I'd like to welcome everybody back to the Disability Inclusion Podcast. I have a wonderful guest, Harper Spero of Made Visible, on how business makes accommodation for customers, speaking now. And I wanted to just welcome you to the podcast. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me.
So I am curious, you have such a fascinating story. Can you tell me a little bit about what you're doing right now?
Absolutely. So I launched a podcast in 2018 called Made Visible, where I interviewed people living with invisible illnesses, as well as caregivers, friends, family members, doctors, healers, business owners, to help share stories related to invisible illness and help more people feel seen and heard. I finished that podcast back in 2020 after 100 episodes, and I've now been continuing to build out the brand of Made Visible, working with companies to create more inclusion within their companies with employees living with invisible illnesses, disabilities, chronic illnesses, and mental illness. I've additionally been working with I've been working with individuals and groups to facilitate writing classes for people with invisible illnesses, to share their stories, to come together and connect and feel like part of a community, given whatever health condition they're living with.
So what would be an example of a visible versus an invisible disability?
I have a rare immune deficiency called hyper IgE syndrome, and everything that I'm currently dealing with is related to my lungs. So you can't see what's going on in my lungs, but for me, walking upstairs or going uphill is sometimes challenging. I think, other invisible illnesses, depression, anxiety, multiple sclerosis, where to the naked eye, you have no idea what someone's what someone's going through, but behind the scenes, internally, they could be struggling.
So is it fair to say that because they're invisible, that they're not taken quite as seriously by employers, et cetera?
Absolutely. Employers as well as doctors, friends, family members.
So I actually, what I do is I represent federal employees and requesting reasonable accommodation and disability retirement. A lot of times people will come to us, they're blind, they're deaf, they have open and obvious, like is the term in the law, disabilities. But then there's the people who have the hidden disabilities, and those I find the federal government, even though they're supposed to be the model employer, many times people have to struggle and fight and get the doctor's letters and the doctor's notes, and then get another doctor's note, and then get another doctor's. Did you find that to be the case?
Yeah, I think that people have to prove themselves. And as if living with an invisible illness is not challenging enough emotionally, and navigating it on your own with your doctors, with your support system, but also having to advocate for yourself and having to prove and show to people, hey, this is real, I'm not making this up, can be really exhausting. It's already a really trying experience to navigate this when navigating what's actually physically happening to you and your body, but then to have to prove to people, oh, this is real, I'm really going through this, and this is the kind of support that I need.
So tell me how you got to where you are. What were you doing before, and what brought you to this field that you're in now?
So I spent 10 years working for other people, always knowing that I wanted to be an entrepreneur, but not knowing what the business was. And in 2014, I went through a coaching training program and became a coach. And I've been doing that for just under 8 years now. I started as a career coach and then pivoted to a business coach, helping other people who are solopreneurs and small business owners launch and build businesses. So for me, I created opportunities that I never saw existing out there. I hadn't met a business coach that I connected with. So I became the business coach that I wanted to be and I wanted to have. The same thing happened with Made Visible. I didn't see any content online, audio, video, written format that I resonated with. A lot of the stories that I saw were from people who were stuck at home given whatever health condition they had. And while that may be their reality, for me, it wasn't. And I, wanted to hear stories of people who lived lives where they had jobs and relationships and went to school and had friends and lived fully and their invisible illness not be the full definition of who they were. So it was important for me to start sharing my story after having a major surgery in 2012. I had spent the first 27 years of my life completely hiding the fact that I had a rare disease. I had so much shame around it. All I wanted was to feel included and similar to my friends and my peers. And it took a major surgery in March 2012 that made me go, okay, I guess I need to start telling people what I'm going through, that this is not just a one off surgery, but there's an underlying condition that I live with. So instead of just going, okay, let me tell my friends and family and start talking about it, I then started writing about it. And then I launched the podcast and sort of went really broad in trying to help other people feel less isolated, because I received so many emails and people messaging me on social media saying, I've never told anybody about my condition. I'm scared. And you've given me permission and a reason to want to be forthcoming about this, because there's so many people that are living with disabilities and invisible illnesses. And because it's invisible, we just don't know what they're going through.
Just so I understand, were you a business coach before, or did you become a business? You were.
Yeah.
Okay. So you found your passion and your calling. What made you unique? I guess, to quote Dan Sullivan, your unique ability, what you brought to the job of being a business coach, correct?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I went through a coaching training program, so I had some skills from that. And I had been in marketing and event production and PR for 10 years prior to starting this business. So I had this foundation of how to get a business out into the world. And what's really interesting is a lot of my business coaching clients came from me sharing my story around my own health. And a lot of my clients are in the health and wellness space. So, me being vulnerable, my willingness to share what I've been through has led to a lot of business.
It's really funny how so many times we think that the things we have to hide end up becoming the things that make us great and make us unique, you know? I think I
I
saw.
mean, if you asked me at 10 years old if I would ever have a business related to my health, I would laugh at you, because there was no chance. I was so uncomfortable in my skin related to my health that there was no chance that my business, my life would ever revolve around something related to my health.
I noticed when the question, "You're a successful leader, give me some traits." The traits you use are determination, passion, and fearlessness. I can see the fear that if you were to put out there that you have a condition, that maybe people won't want to work with you, and it sounds like that ended up flipping to be the exact reason why people did want to work with you.
Yeah, and what's interesting about being a business coach at the same time as hosting a podcast and doing all this work with Made Visible is that they've overlapped so much. People that were clients became podcast guests became clients, listeners of the podcast became clients. So there was so much overlap that I didn't even expect to happen, but it all stemmed from the fact that I was forthcoming about what I've been through, and people saw me as not a business coach who typically, says, okay, in working together, I guarantee that you're going to make six figures, or these are the kind of outcomes you're going to have. I came at it from a more balanced way of making sure that people prioritize their health and well-being while also building a business, because building a business is exhausting and time consuming, and you can do endless amounts of work. And I have definitely embedded in my coaching business to help people find that balance and find that synergy of making sure you take time for yourself as well.
Do you find that that's made them more successful, or it's just
No
an aside?
question.
Yes.
No
How's that?
question.
Give me an example.
I think, one of the things that's been really valuable to me is transcendental meditation is something that I learned years ago. And it's something that I'm more productive because I meditate. And I've helped other people introduce them to meditation or other tools that prioritize their well-being to then be a better employee or a better business owner. That it helps them, take things to the next step because they're prioritizing their well-being. And I think there's too many people that are just go, 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 hustling and never taking a step to reflect and take a moment and take vacation and prioritize your well-being, that they just, neglect it and just keep pushing forward. And also there's a lot of people that experience burnout. So I think if you're just pushing forward so much, there comes a time where your body shuts down, especially if you have, certain health issues that say, all right, I'm not going to let you continue forward. And then all of a sudden you can't work at all. So I think it's helping people factor that in to prevent burnout and that extreme stress.
Understood. Yeah. So let me ask you, tell me some of the projects you're working on right now that really have you passionate, get you excited.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm working with companies right now to create more content and community around invisible illness. So one of the companies I'm working with is UBS, and we are currently launching a podcast internally and hopefully externally, interviewing employees who are living with invisible illnesses and disabilities to talk about their experience in the workplace. And I think one of the benefits of the COVID-19 pandemic is that employers are prioritizing their employees' mental and physical well-being more than ever before. The word immunocompromised is being talked about more than ever before. So people are being given the opportunity to share their stories, connect with others internally at their companies around health and mental health. And so that's something I'm really excited about. Additionally, I'm on the board of the Immune Deficiency Foundation, and I joined that just about a year ago. I was a volunteer for many years, and then they've gone through a major overhaul with a new executive director. And it's really exciting to be part of an organization that has an incredible foundation, so many amazing programs that they offer, and then help to create the future of this organization.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I read in your interview, but I also just popped into my head right now as an employer. I have 20 people who work for me. COVID-19 has made a humongous difference as far as us. Every single person could have been the person who got, long COVID. So nobody can feel like somehow I'm better than someone else or that I can't. And as the employer, you can't think that I can't judge, first of all, you should never judge anybody, but practically as it sits in front of you, you recognize that nobody asked for this situation, and you see it change right in front of your eyes.
Absolutely.
What are you? Have you noticed COVID-19 make a difference in your business?
Yeah, it's interesting. I actually the call I had right before this interview was with a company to talk about opportunities to work together, and one of their questions for me was, are people coming to you related to long haul COVID? Are there people that are looking to connect with other people who have been through long haul COVID? It's a thing. It is definitely a thing. The impact on COVID, the impact that COVID had on my business is I think that it's more relevant to more people. I think that my audience for my podcast and my attendees and students for my writing classes were people with invisible illnesses. And this topic of invisible illness is now becoming more relevant to people who are not currently living with invisible illnesses because they want to be more educated. They want to be more compassionate, and they want to be able to understand what other people are going through, especially in the workplace. There's a dedication to understanding what people around them are living through because you just have no idea if you haven't been through it. And likely you or someone you're close to will be affected at some point in your life.
I see that you used to work with a record label. I'm fascinated by that because I'm a guitar player and I love music. But where did you work? Just curious.
I worked at a record label called Razor and Tie, and one of their biggest accomplishments was putting out the Kids Bop series.
Ah, so you say in your interview that just because that's your passion, that doesn't necessarily mean that's your calling. Is that what you're saying? Instead, it seems like
Yeah.
it seems like what your calling is what you were put on this earth to make a difference in. Is that what would you go that far or?
Yeah, I mean, something like music is something I'm really, really passionate about. And years ago, I had this aha after working in the industry, not just at this one company, that it was something that I wanted to enjoy personally and not get bogged down by, the stress of the music industry that is not an easy industry and only gets more challenging. So for me, I think, my purpose, the reason that I do the work that I do is to help other people share their stories, put themselves out there, be authentic to who they are. And that's relevant to everything that I do with Made Visible, as well as a business coach. My clients are often doing meaningful work. I want to help them get the word out there on what they're doing and how they're impacting people as well.
Okay, so I have to always, and I don't have to, but I always love to end my interviews with what inspired you in your life. Is there a book or a person or both, ideally, that you can share with our audience that made a difference in your life as far as your career path and what you've chosen to do?
Absolutely. So, on the book front, I discovered this book shortly before starting my podcast, How to Be a Friend to a Friend Who's Sick by Letty Cotton Pogrebin. And it's basically a manual, I call it, for how to be a friend to someone who's sick. And Letty is someone that dealt with breast cancer and had other health issues, but she gives really, really practical advice on how to be supportive of people. Because if you haven't been sick yourself, it's hard for you to understand what someone's going through. And she has tons of lists of here's what to bring in this opportunity, here's what to think about, here's what you're not thinking about. And I wish that everyone in the world would pick up this book. I've sent it to so many people. I've recommended it to so many people. On the person front, it plays into my love of music. The first person that comes to mind for me is David Byrne, who's 71 years old and is an amazing creative. I love his personality and how no matter his age and what's happening in the world, he continues to do things the way that he wants to do them, has a vision, and just constantly reinvents himself. And I feel like I've lived many, many lives working in corporate, working at agencies, working at different brands, building my businesses, and constantly reinventing myself. And he's really been the master at that.
I don't think it's a coincidence. This past week, I was listening to Lily of the Valley. It's such an amazing song.
Love it.
He really
Love
is
it.
special. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast, and we look forward to hearing more about your company. And I just want to thank you once again for taking the time.
Thank you so much, Eric. I enjoyed this a lot.